Alright, General Instruction 1-1 Classification with the carriers. For the purpose of the accounting report with the carriers grouped in the following three classes. Class 1 with the carrier with the annual with the carrier with the operating revenue, 250 million or more after applying with the railroad revenue with deflation, inflator and formula for showing the note A. Class 2 with the carrier with half of the annual carrier with the operating revenue less than 250 million, but then except for the $20 million after applying with the railroad revenue deflator formula showing the note A. Class 3 carrier, they have the annual carrier operating revenues of the $20 million or less after applying with the railroad revenue for the inflator formula note A. B1, the class to which of the carrier belong with the determined annual with the carrier the operating revenues after the revenue deflator adjustment family railroads operating with the United States with the single the integrated rail shifted mobile tree with the single carrier with the classification purpose of the upward downward rate classification with effect with the January 1st and the January year immediately following with the third consecutive year with the revenue with the class qualification. If the class 2 or class 3 carrier's classification is changed based on the 3-year adjusting the revenue for the carrier is complete with the classification individual survey with the form of the board March 31st of the year of the following, the end of the period of which it relates. 3 newly organized carriers should be classified with the base for the annual of the carrier with the operating revenue with the railroad revenue deflator adjustment for the latest period of the operation. The actual detail that are not available to new carriers should be classified on the base for the carrier with the operating revenue is done with the estimate for the year of the after the railroad revenue deflator adjustment. 4 when the business combination occupancy curve with the merger reorganization consolidation everything carrier with the should be reclassified effectively with the January 1st and next year for the calendar year the base for the combined revenue for the year of the when the combination curve with the after the revenue deflator adjustment. 5. Unusual circumstances of the partial liquidation, curtailment, the alignment with the contracted service of regulation, unduly burdened with the carrier may request the board exemption with the regulation, but the request shall be written and specify the condition justifying the exemption. Class 1, where the capital keep all of the account for the system, whichever the act of the operation class 2 and class 3 railroads not required to maintain the account system, while switching the terminal over the company with regards to the operation revenues designated class 3 carriers. Unless provided the otherwise electrical railway carriers, regardless of the operating revenues, will designate with the class 3 carriers. 1-2 Classification of account. The accounting with the prescribed the cover the property with the transportation operator for the operation and civil thereto with the revenues expense for the tax for the rents for the other income items of the income items of income such for the operation such account of the prescribed investment of the property not used in the transportation operation for the other investment income thereof the unusual infrequent item of the operation the disposal of the discontinued segments for the extraordinary for the accounting change of the very accessible liability of the capital include all the balance sheet the statements of the court retaining earnings account from the connection link between the income account of the equity section of the balance sheet with the provided the record to transfer of the net income the loss of the year with the certain caption of the transaction with the authorized the reward and with the other items. The cost of the property revenue expense for the tax of the rent for the miscellaneous operation involved with the use of such facilities, hotel with the restaurant with the grain elevator for the storage warehouse, the power plant for the cold store with the planes, etc. should not be included with the accounts prescribed for the transportation operation unless the operation of the facilities conducted with the railway company with connection with the furnished transportation services likewise the cost of the property the revenue expense for the tax of the rent arises from the operation of the stock yard shall not be included with the accounts of the prescribed with the transportation operation unless the operation for the facility to conduct with the operation connection with the transportation of livestock but does not intend with the cost of the property for the income of the right for the incidental of the public stock yard for the service rendered for the stock yard for the primarily for the transportation services shall be excluded with the transportation operation accounts. Some facilities acting with the provided with the joint user for the track of the bridge yard for the waiver the safety of the facilities which of the record with the item settlement for the shop of the facility the compensation for the use of the facility fixed amount with the end or is the based on the charge of the person and passengers down in the car with the other unit with the amount with the fairly apportioned with the operating the company among the joint facility operator with the expense of the income and account for the creditor shall distribution of these be adhered with the debt of the train service with the connection with the line haul of the traffic include with the operator with the joint arrangement with the benefit of 2 or more carriers and not consider the joint facility operation. D1 extraordinary lines. All lines over the item loss recognized during the years of the include with the ordinary income unless the evidence of the clearly support of their classification extraordinary items. Extraordinary items character of the both the unusual nature for the infrequently income to take in the current account of the environment in which for the firm operates they must also meet with the material standards. Unusual meeting of the events for the transaction must impose with a high degree of the abnormally typical clear unrelated only with the incidental related to the ordinary typically activities of the entity. Infrequently occurrence meaning of the event with the transaction should be tied with the non-reasonable expected to reoccur with the foreseeable future. Unusual, infrequent items, material event for the unusual in nature for the infrequently occurrence with both of the not meet both criteria with the classification extraordinary shall be included with the accounts of the provided with the separate components of the income and expense of the continuing operation. Discontinued operation. The result of the continuing operation shall be reported separately with the discontinued operation. Any gain or loss as a result of the disposal of the segment of the business for the definition 23A shall be reported with the conjunction with the related result of the discontinued operation next to ordinary not as extraordinary item. The disposable segment of the business shall be distinguished other than the disposable of the asset of the incentive of the evolution at either the business, such for the disposable part of the line of the business, shifting of the production for the marketing and activity, particular line of the business, the one location or another, phasing out of the product of the class of the service, the other change for the occasion of the technological improvement, if the loss is expected from the pro sale of the payment of the segment, the estimated loss to provide at the measurement of the day, see the definition 23b, but if the gain is recognized with the real life of the ordinary disposable day, see section see definition 23c. For prior period adjustments, only the two items profit the loss within should be accounted with the report of the prior period adjustment with exclude the determination of the net income of the current period. One, correction of the error with the financial statement of the prior period with the adjustment with the result of the actual realization of the income tax benefit of the pre-acquisition operating loss for the carried forward purchase subsidiaries. While expectations of the two items that just mentioned that all items are profit the loss of the recognized period that shall be included the determination of the net income of that period. Accounting change with the error within financial statement that result of the mathematical mistake with the mistake with the application of the accounting with the principle of the oversight of the mischief of the fact that the existed at the time of the financial statement that were prepared in contrast with the change of the accounting estimate the result of the new information subsequent developments from the better insight with the judgment. Correction of the error may be accomplished through a prior period adjustment. See instruction to 1.2d4 with the change of the accounting with the estimation could be accounted for the period of change with the future period with the change of the facts of both of the infrastructure 1/7 and change with the accounting with the principle of accounting refers to the board of approval the cumulative effect of the change of the accounting principle that should be ordinarily reflected accounting provided the determined net income. 6. Materialability. The general standard of the item of the conservative material that would extend to the 10% of the annual income losses before the extraordinary items may be considered in relation to the trend of the annual earnings before the extraordinary items other than appropriate of the criteria of the items shall be considered the individual not in the aggregated but determined materially. However, the effects of the seriously related to the transaction arising a single specifically identifiable event with a plan action but shall be aggregated determined materially. 7. Board approval of the accountants of the letter. It should be in accordance with the accountants to provide the extraordinary items that you use for the infrequent items that discontinued operation period and prior period of the adjustments of the cumulative effects change to the account principles upon approval of the board. If the carrier retains the service of the independent account with the request of the using of these accounts should be accompanied by a letter from the independent account proving the otherwise accommodating of the request. All right, 1.3 records. Each of the carrier kept in the books of the account with the author of the book and the record of the memorandum, support the entry of the such of the books economy that may able to furnish the reading of full information of the any of the item, including the any of the account with each of the entries shall be supported. Such detailed information permitted the reading of the identification and of the verification of all of the facts relevant thereto, but all the expenditure, including the expense of the accounts of the office for the employer, the either separately voucher for the payrolls, received bill for the canceled check for the receipt of the petty cash for the payments for the other evidence of the expenditure for the incurred of the board. The books referred to the herein include not only the books of the account with limited technical simple, but all of the records, such for the minute books, stock with the books, of the report with the corresponding memorandum, etc., which will be useful in developing history of the fact regardless of the aim of the transaction. No carrier shall destroy the books of the memorandum, etc., with the support entry of the account with unless for the destruction permitted the regulation governing preservation of the records in Part 1220 of this chapter. In addition, of the prescribed of the accounts clearing and accounts over the temporary with the account with the subdivision of the account with may be kept to provide with the integrity of the prescribed account with the not impaired with the cost details shall be maintained with the cost center for the purpose of the cost assignment the effective of 1179 the provide the cost control of the cost planning of the designated of the area the responsible for these cost center with similarly defined with the railroad existing responsibility center with the cost center information shall be therefore by kept at the same level as detail presently collected with the categories maintained by the railroad internal managerial accounting system. This is detailed information should not be reported to the board on an ongoing basis. However, the carrier shall keep the detailed information provided the ready analysis of the verification of the cost collected by the cost center. 1.4 accounting period. Each of the carriers shall keep the book for the monthly basis with the known transactions of the nearly with a certain that shall be entered for the account with no later than 60 days after the last day of the period with which accounts are stated, except for the time in which whether the final entry of the year ending with December 31st, where it shall be made with the extent of the except for the day of the following of the March shall not interfere with the preparation of the following an annual report. A trial balance of the general ledger account will be prepared close to each of the month, setting out with the account number, the title of the amount with the ledger account with the mechanical, electronic, automatic data process, the printing out with the documentation produced, the equivalent manual prepare the trial with the basis for the sale, identify the prior balance and the accounting number at the end of the calendar year with the revenue expense for the other income and the accounts shall be included with the retained earnings account with the balance sheet with the accounting balance of it shall be brought forward to the general ledger in the succeeding year. No change that should be made with the calendar period with cover of the quarterly annual reports that have been filed with the board unless they are changed if the first have been authorized by the board. 1.5. The accrual method of the accounting. Accounting with the operating revenues, operating expense for the income and other items each for the month, year shall be with nearly practicable on basis of the accruals that consistently apply with any change of the practice accounting with the accruals and unusual accruals involved with the material amount shall be reported promptly to the board. 1-6. Charged with the justice with a reasonable officer of the accounting prescribed the system of the account with the carrier of the property operating revenue operating with the maintenance expense with the other carrier the expense that shall be just responsible for the not exceed the amount with the necessary with the honest sufficient the operation of the management with the carrier business with the payment should not exceed the fair market value of the good the service acquired with the arm's length with the transaction payment the excess of the stuff with the reasonable charges shall be included the amount of the 51 miscellaneous of the income charge 1 over the change of the accounting estimate the change of the accounting estimate arrived during the current year of the which of the applicable the prior year shall include the same in the account of the would have been charged for the credit for the item that have been taken the adjustment of the year of the which they pertain to certain instruction 1-2 of the G5 of the accounting changes 1-8 accounting with the computer system and the word processing costs with the capital with the cost of the computer system and the word processing costs shall be change the charge for the property account with the 59 charge for the cost of the dedicated to the particular function of the account 59 of the rupee relay of the depreciation expense for the capital cost will be changed for the account with the 62-33 the 0 of the depreciation of the equipment railway maintenance of the relay of the computer system and the word of the processing equipment should be charged with the function towards for the other equipment is active for the appropriate natural expense labeled material purchase expense of the other repairs performed outside of the company but shall be charged for the operating expense 39-24-23-46 operating cost for the relay of the computer system word processing equipment shall be charged with the function of the 87 of the management server the tab of the word processing when the equipment benefits more than one activity with the equipment the base of the one activity only such operation costs should be charged by the activity function benefits 1-9 transaction affiliated with the company with records supporting the data all the transactions affiliated with the company is maintained with a separate file with the type of the transaction referred to in this paragraph of the management server any other type of the server that renders your sale of the facilities to other type of the asset of the property file shall be maintained so that enable the carrier upon the board request furnish accurate information supporting documentation. And the particular transaction within the 15 days of the request is not intended to include the data relating to the ordinary carrier operation full lawful tariff charge for the interchange of the equipment that each of the bill rendered for the affiliate with the company state with a specifically basically determined charge for the less of the file will contain the information support with the specific basis of the charge. Punch card with the magnet tape with the device disc of the machinable sensible devices recording consolidation summaries accounting the transition record of the carrier with electronic automatic data of the processing may constitute the file within the meaning of the instruction. The carrier shall record the cost of asset with the server that received the affiliated supplier with the invoice for the invoice price plus the incidental cost of the relay with the transaction and this cost of the invoice price with the determined with the prevailing price list for the affiliated supplier available to the general public in normal course of business and no such price list for the charge of the bill be recorded lower the cost of the originator of the affiliated supplier with the applicable valuations reserve the case of the asset of the sale of the estimated fair market of the value to determine the basis of the representative study with a similar competitive arm's length with the bargain of the transaction difference between the actual transaction price of the below as well as the charge of not transportation related shall be considered financial nature and shall be recorded accordingly the non-operating charge that were credited see instruction 1-6. Nothing contained within here shall be construed with the restraint of the carrier subdividing account with the instruction 1-3 the purpose of the recording separately transaction or the company's carrier of the reporting information consolidated combined base of the railroad annual report form R1 maintained with the file appropriate with the record of the supporting data but shall be included the worksheet showing the revenues expense for the earning and investment of the asset for the accumulated depreciation all the affiliated railroads rail-related affiliated company worksheets shall also disclose the elimination of the carrier shall disclose the methodology support the segregation rail-related other items appropriate with this further file shall maintain the support of the reconcile the net need with the sale of the transfer reclassification as well as tax deducted for the gains and losses. Alright, 110, accounting for the income tax. A, in the interior period of the tax allocation for the account shall be applied with the material time difference for the definition 17. Even occurs between the pre-tax account and the income tax and income. Carriers may elect to provide with the Revenue Act of 1970 with the account for the investor of the tax driven by either the following of the method of the deferred method of accounting. See the paragraphs D, E below. All income tax, federal, state, and the other concurrently with accruable income tax report return purpose of the charge for the accounting 556, the income tax ordinary income and accounting 590, income tax for the extraordinary items applicable under inter-period with the tax allocation method of the accounting with the tax for the effect for the time difference for the end see the definition for the originating with the current with the accounting period with the are allocated with the income tax expense for the future period time difference for the reverse the similar time difference for the originating with the reverse and current with the accounting with the period should combine with the into the group of the current tax rate if applied to determine the tax effect of each of the group of the carriers should not apply with the other current taxes of determining the tax effect of reversing the difference except with upon approval of the board when determining the amount of the difference deferred tax to refer to the computing of the state with the other tax individual jurisdiction, federal income tax rate may be increased by the president equivalent with the effect of the tax imposed by the jurisdiction classifying the deferred and charge and credit as current with the non-current carrier shall follow the classification criteria with the relate with the asset liability cover the time difference of the deferred change of the credit that does not relate with the asset of the liability because of the A, there's no associated asset of the liability, B, the reduction of the associated with the asset of the liability not cover the time difference between the reversal shall be classified based expect for the reversal date with the specified time difference of the classification disregard with any additional time difference of the may arrive with the based on the criteria of the classifying other than liabilities. See the future tax benefits of the loss to carry forward with the such for the normal carry recognized in the year with the which such loss of the reduced tax only the unusual instance of the realization of the assured of the beyond with the reasonable doubt with the future tax benefits of the loss to carry forward with the recognized over the year with the loss of the tax effects of the reliable loss of the carryback for the recognized determination that income of the loss of the loss period with the appropriate adjustment of the existing of the next net deferred tax credit may also be necessary for the loss period. All right. D. The carrier is electing the account with the investment tax credit will flow through the method of the show account. Show the account credit account 556 with the income tax ordinary income of the tax account 590 the income tax extraordinary adds apple the chart of the 760 the federal income tax credit the amount of the investment of the tax credit utilize the current accounting period with the follow of the through the method of the follow of the investment tax credit of the account with the 557 the provision of the deferred tax shall reflect the difference between the tax payable the recognition of the allowable investment tax credit with the maybe taxable income tax expense the follow the recognition investment tax credit would be able to base on the accounting income based on the accounting income. All right, carriers electing to account with the investment with the tax credit by the deferred method that concurrently with the making the entry described in the paragraph D of the above the charging account 557 the provision deferred tax and account 591 deferred tax and extraordinary items as applicable shall credit with the 786 with the cumulative deferred income tax credit with the investment tax credit utilized with the reduction current year tax for the liability deferred accounting with the purpose of the investment tax credit the deferred shall be amortized with the credit for the accounting 557 the provision of the deferred taxes. All right, 111. The items of the test of the text of the accounts for the items appearing with the text of the account with the elsewhere with the herein with the purpose of clearly indicating the application for the prescribed account with the items intent with the representative of the non-exhaustive with the appearance of the item of the text of the primary account warrants of the inclusion of the item of the account with the mention of the only when the whole text that indicates of the inclusion of the in so much of the same item as the frequently appear within one primary account of the property each of the instant of the test must be determined with the entire text of each of the primary account. 112. Distribution pay expense for the employee with the pay with the expense for the officer employee with the regular assignment with the specifically duties to perform an incidental service with the different nature of the involved with a small expense that may be included with the appropriate expense for the account for the duties within which of the officer for the employee is regular assigned. All right, when the necessary portion of the pay of the officer employee at the various account with the carrier shall portion of the pay of the base for the directly assignable pay for the various accounts. 113 payroll related expense for the fringe benefit account with the 12000 on the distributed with the activities within one of the following techniques in order to profit supply with the proactive of the total fire and experience expense account with an such way the distributed equivalent portion of the cost of each for the activity of the factory shall develop with the take of the account with the variables of the following. 1. The effect of the seniority of the expense for example the profit sharing with the suspension or pension for the made available to one of the certain categories of the employee that may be made more predominantly one of the activity of the other, and then another, the effect of the type of the work performed, for example, the workman's compensation expense for the may vary for each of the category employees, because of the rate chart of the claim of the experience of the category, any other variable may they have the appreciable effect of the equity of the apportionment. Distributed the amount with the same portion of the pay chart for each of the activity accounting 11.0000 salary wages. Distributed amount with the using any other equitable base for the care of the can substantiate all cares to be prepared to describe the base of the appointment, apportionment of the distribute expense for the given their instruction. All right, C. Any carrier with the fine with the impractical to distribute the expense of the required with the instruction should be further furnished board with the full or particular with a condition to prevent the proper distribution unreceived of the stuff of the information carried by with the procedure followed. All right, 114. Submission of the question of the maintainment of the uniformity of the accounting with the carrier should submit the question with the doubtful interpretation on the board with the consideration and decision. 1115. Transfer the government authority of the federal, state, of the municipal, the government transfer of the cash of the other asset of the railroad. The transaction should be the account with the accordance with the provisions set forth here under. Of the following form of the governing of the transfer of the include with the accounting with 502 of the railroad operating revenue, the transfer of the government authority to the current operating for the receipt of the payment, the reimbursement of the operating law for the sustain with the specific line with the current certain certain region. For the example, include the support of the computer operation for the railroad, local rail, serving assist with the subside of the grant of the railroad under the authority of the Railroad Revitalization Regulatory Reform Act of 1976. Subside the designated of the donor offset of the operating expense of the railroad. Subsides which may be applied with the discretion of the recipient of the operating expense of the operating property. B. Government transfer of the relating to the acquisition, additional improvement of the depreciable account of the operation, putting with the account of the 783, deferrable revenue transfer from the government accounting authorities receive the accounting 783 with a periodical trial of the accounting 503 with the railroad operating revenue the organization deferred transfer of regular government authorities shall be credited with amounts that equal the depreciation cost of the asset of the supply. Government transfer of the form of the designated the purchase of the non-depreciable operating property with issue included the 796 of the other capital surplus life of the manner described in the next step of the account of the transfer from the federal government to Amtrak with the Conrail relating with the acquisition additional improvement of the depreciable the non-depreciable operating property should be included in the account with the 796 of the manner described in the text of the account. Transfer of the federal government with the Amtrak with the Conrail over the described in paragraph D1 of the account in accordance with the paragraph A of the text of the provision of the section does not apply to the following forms of the government transfer of the government contribution the connection with the conjunction project with the government agencies and the railroad participate with the transfer of the type of the account with the accordance with the provision with the instruction within 217 of the paragraph of B with the instruction applicable to the construction project the government payment the specific services rendered for the care of the transfer property person rail line other services prescribed in the A1 of the section of the payment to be included the account with the 501 railway operation revenues inclusive of the transfer of the government authorities government transfer relating to the other the carrier operations government transfer the exchange of the debt of the inquiry the server the recipient government the transfer shall generally record the made available to the railroad. However, the transfer relating with the specific operation shall be recorded and earned. The government transfer the form of the asset of those cases other than cash shall be recorded and the fair value is received. All right, 116, business entertainment expense. If the business entertainment expense are accounted for the operating expense incurred with the conjunction with the sale of the marketing-related activities, sales marketing-related activities, although the emphasis of the carrier the ability to provide efficiency, time of the competitive services with the activities include with the outlays the designated design promote new business as well with the outlay incurred maintenance of the existing business for the entertainment expenditure that must be reasonable in relation with the business conduct of the business for the purpose of the entertainment that must be adequately supported. Example of the type of the activity include the following: salesperson salary, travel expense of the diverse advertising, promotional, educational material, the conduct, shipping, shippers, Simpsons conference of the meeting of the traffic related functions, the use of the direct mail, solicitation, publication, distribution, routing guides, and serve the directories. Incidental promotion of the material stuff of the road, atlas for the calendars, pens, scratch pad for the other materials, the normal value of the conduct, business that oriented lunch at the dinners, public affair of the program and conference of the customer, service calls, sponsoring sale of the promotion function of the involved with the number of the customer, the potential customers. It must be noted activity listed above the not to be automatically accounted with the operating expense of the carrier must be able to justify with the activity primarily show with the marketing related to the market business with the entertainment expense of the account with the non-operating expense that cannot be shown with the related with the sale of the marketing expense of the expense that are primarily related to the recreation of the conveyance of the comfort of the individuals rather than transaction of the business. Example, the type of the activity include the following: recreational resource of the entertainment that are not limited to the fishing, hunting, the tennis, golfing, scripting, other sporting and recreational trip, the outgoing expense of the pay with the transportation carrier own the lease furnished vehicle, the planes, and the helicopter, both in boat yachts and other methods. Expense paid lodging and care for their own lease for the furnished motel, for the hotel, for the apartments, condominiums, lodging for the rooms, and other place for the overnight accommodation for the paid admission for the any of the sport, cultural, educational, recreational, entertaining or occurrence of the gift of the athletic equipment, the food, liquor, the beverage of all types of smoking material, clothing, and personal accessories, furnishing a lunch for the dinners, the appetite for the beverage if there are no true business purpose. 7. The special occasion such for the holidays party that must be noted but the actively listed above the not to be automatically with the account of the non-operating expense of the carrier to justify with the activity primarily sale of the marketing related to be accounted for the operating expenses. And I'm not going to read the note. The 1117 disclosure guideline in addition with the accruing president of the regulation disclosure relating to the APB option of the FASB statement that adopted the board required. All right, 118, distribution of the expense of the material, tools, fuel, lubrication, purchase of the services in general. The expense shall be done directly with the activity based on usage whenever possible. When necessary, a portion of the expense of the two or more activities, they should be equitable proportioned only to the activities in which they actually use the activities they support. Or 119, account of the other comprehensive income of the railroad, record of the other comprehensive income of the 799. One other comprehensive income of the amounts to include the amount of the maintainment of each of the category other comprehensive income. Example of the category of the other comprehensive income to include with the foreign currency and the items of minimum and personal liability adjustment on realized gains and lawfully other for available for sale the typical security cash flow hedge amounts. Supporting record of the maintainment for account of the 799 each of the company readily identified with the cumulative amount with the only other comprehensive income of each of the item included the in this account. When the item of the other comprehensive items income and for the determination earnings within the current subsequent period of the reclassification adjustment record of the accounting of 799 avoid the double accounting with when the item in the net income was included in other comprehensive income of the same as prior of the period. Alright, 120. Accounting the derivative instrument of the hedging activity carriers will recognize the derivative instrument of either asset of the liability financial statement dimension for each instruments of the fair value of the derivative instrument, final instrument of the other contract of all or the three following characteristics. The derivative instrument has one with an underlying notional amount of the payment. The provision of these terms is defined with the amount with the settlement of the settlements within some of the cases that were not settlements is required. Two, the derivative instrument of the require no initial of the net investment, but the initial of the net investment is smaller than it would require for the other type of the contract that would be expected to have a similar response obtained with the market factors. The derivative instrument, the terms that require the permanent net settlement of the derivative instrument can be readily settled net by means of the outside of the contract with the derivative instrument. The terms provide the delivery and asset with the recipient with the position on substantial different with the net settlement. The accounting with the change of the fair value of the derivative instrument depends on the intent of the use of the designation change with the fair value of the derivative instrument of the designated the fair value cash flow with the hedge of the head will be recorded in account of the 713.5 the derivative instrument assessing account of the 7635 derivative instrument liability is appropriate with the gain with the loss of the chain with the earnings accounting 551 miscellaneous income charges. Derivative instruments may be specifically designated with the fair value cash flow hedge. The hedge may also manage the risk of private interest of foreign currency transaction and either maintain documentation for hedge relationship with the inception of the hedge with the detail of the risk of the management objective of the strategy undertake the hedge of the nature of the risk being held with how the hedge effectiveness will be determined if the carrier designated the derivative instrument of the fair value of the hedge with the against the exposure with the change of the fair value they recognize as asset liability from commitment of the record of the change of the fair value of the derivative instrument designated the fair value hedge the accounting 713.6 the derivative instrument asset hedge and account of the 763.6 the derivative instrument liabilities is appropriate with the corresponding adjustment with the sub accounting of the item being hedged. The inactive portion of the hedge of the transaction will be reflected in the same income of the expense of the accounting with the wood has been used the hedge for the health been disposed of the settlement in the case of the fair value hedge for the firm and a commitment of the new asset of the liability created as a result of the hedge relationship with the new asset of the liability will become the part of the carrying amount of the item being hedged. If the carrier with the designated derivative instrument with the cash flow hedge against the exposure to the variable cash flow of the probable forecast transaction will be recorded change of the fair value of the derivative instrument in account with the 713.6 and derivative instrument asset hedge in account 763.6 the derivative instrument liability hedge is appropriate with the corresponding amount of the account 7991 other comprehensive ineffective the portion of the hedge the effective portion head transaction related to the same income and expenses account that would have been used to hedge and have been disposed of the or settled amounts recorded other than comprehensive income will be reclassified in earnings same period of the period the hedge forecast items affecting earnings. Instruction for property accounts. Part 2. Testing. Alright.